before I share anything online, I always run it by my kids and I make sure that they feel comfortable with it because it is their story. But they have noticed that parents come up to them at school and they'll say, your mom wrote something. And I don't know which one of you three it was about, but it helped me with my kid. And I saw them in a different way. And they've been getting that for a long time now. And that's the power of vulnerability.
They say when a baby is born, so is a mother. But while you are there to help your baby grow into the person he or she is meant to be, who is there to help you? Many women feel lost and alone when they become mothers, wondering, who am I now? Sometimes it feels like the transformation from woman to mother is as radical as a caterpillar's transformation into a butterfly. Did you know that inside the chrysalis, the caterpillar literally turns into goop before it rearranges itself into a butterfly? This podcast is about the goop, what soul transformation looks like as you transition from being a woman to a mom. Your baby's growth matters, but yours does too. You're not alone. I'm your host, Whitney Ming. Welcome to the Motherhood Metamorphosis.
Welcome, everyone, to this episode of the Motherhood Metamorphosis. I'm your host, Whitney Ming, and today we're talking to Whitney Fleming. Whitney is a mom of 3 teen girls and married to one of the most patient men on earth. She is the co-manager of the popular blog Parenting Teens and Tweens and writes musings on her Facebook and Instagram at Whitney Fleming Writes. She brings an authentic and realistic voice to topics such as marriage, midlife, and mental health, and believes being vulnerable and sharing your story is the most powerful way we can help others. So, Whitney, I'm really happy to have you here today. You reached out to me, which makes me so happy, and I'm just really happy to talk to you today about teens and transitions.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
So we were chatting just a minute ago about how we both have twins, and you said that you had actually your twins and then your next daughter 16 months later. So you had these 3 toddlers, and we were chatting about how that can be so challenging, but also now that our kids are older, it's also challenging.
Yes, it definitely was. In the beginning, you just really want to keep them alive, right? Like I had these twins and then I had, this other baby who was just 16 months behind. And my whole goal literally was just to keep them alive all throughout the day. Like 16 months old had no sense of self-preservation or even like understanding of what this baby was. And so, we got through that pretty well. And then we hit the teen years and, we had that kind of sweet spot for a long time where I felt like we were really operating well, we were efficient and we could do all these fun things. And then the teen years hit and it was kind of like, like a nuclear meltdown. Like it was just so much hormones and so much angst and so much change. And, even though like, I feel like my kids are fantastic and they're fun, but there's just so much that goes along with the teen years and then so much change. And it was hard for me because I felt I was really close with my kids because there was always my husband traveled a lot and there was the 4 of us. And so we did everything together. We traveled together, went out together and ate together all the time. And we were always going to our activities. And then all of a sudden it was like the teen years hit and it was like rejection and they wanted to be with their friends and they were gone. And it was just a really, really hard transition for me as a mother to try to figure out what my role was and, how to find my place again in life, but as a mother and to be a good mother to my kids instead of one that was really, kind of frustrated all the time.
Oh, that resonates with me so much. Do you think like having twins and having this like really difficult beginning, like, okay, since I went through a really difficult time during the toddler years, maybe I'll get an easy pass going into the teen years. Did you ever have that idea?
I mean, I don't know if I thought about it that way, but I will definitely say I felt a little cocky, like, especially because one of my daughters had some pretty significant developmental delays in her toddler years. And we focused a lot of time on that. And I really felt I learned to advocate for my kids and I just felt really confident. I was going to have this great relationship with my kids and be so different than my mom was with me. And I just felt probably overly confident. And I probably started struggling a little bit with one of my daughters in 7th grade, who she's very headstrong, and I can't imagine where she gets that from. But she's very headstrong and she has a lot of opinions and she's very confident. And I think that was when I was like, might not go the way that I thought it would. I feel like I'm still working. My kids are 17, my twins are 17, and my daughter's 16, my youngest daughter is 16. And, I feel like it's still evolving every day on how to have a good relationship with them. And it changes because they're changing.
Mm.
So what worked like last year isn't even close to what's working this year. And even though they're so close in age, I have to parent them all so differently. And I think that is like part of that mental exhaustion we talk about so much, is that, have to constantly like tailor your parenting to these kids individually who are changing, who they don't even know who they are. And so that's like the part for me I struggle with a lot, is just I want it to be a little easier. I'm like, when do we get to the good part, right? Like when do we get to be these best friends? And and sometimes we are, but sometimes that moment is fleeting. So
Yeah, I hear you on the mental exhaustion. I'm thinking because I have a 3-year-old currently, she's my youngest, and then I also have teenagers. And I think the little years are just so physically exhausting, like the keeping them alive part, the not sleeping part, the whack-a-mole of bedtime where like you put one down and the other one gets up. So like
right.
there's that physical exhaustion, but I hear you on the mental exhaustion because you're like counseling them through like these friend issues or their identity issues or
Mhm.
body image or
Right.
things that, or the silence where you're like, what's wrong?
Yes.
And they're like, nothing. And you're like, can you just tell
Right.
me? And you like pry and pry and
Right.
pry. And they're like, I don't want to
Right.
talk about it. And
Right.
then that's hard because there's that wedge there, and you just know something's wrong and they just
Right.
won't tell you. So
Yeah.
I think that's like the mental load. And I hear you on the like, when does this get easier? Sometimes I feel like so snarky and I'm like, so people say this is the most rewarding thing you can do in your life. I'm like, well, when does that kick in? Like, when
Right.
does that when does that
Well,
happen?
that's like so true. And I feel like it's funny because sometimes just because I own this blogs, people will write out to me and or ask me to sometimes speak, and they'll be like, because you're a parenting expert. And I'm like, ha 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 ha, ha, because I am so far from a parenting expert. But and what I find fascinating is that it's like one big, especially parenting teens, it's one big oxymoron. It's like you are supposed to support them, but you're supposed to let them make their own decisions, right? And they don't say like when you're supposed to be like what is the in between of this, right? You're supposed to stay available, but you're supposed to let them be in their rooms all the time checking and monitoring. You're supposed to do this, but you're not supposed to do that. Don't do it too much. And so that's like my biggest thing with raising teens, is there is no one way, because like you can follow all the advice that you want. And it's kind of like, and you might appreciate this, like my twins were different sizes when they were born. One was almost 5.5 pounds. The other was 4. And every book and everybody was like, you have to get them on the same schedule. Well, I couldn't do that, right? Because my twins were at the same size, so they didn't wake up at the same time, and one ate differently. And I just was like, every single person I met in the universe was like, just put them on the same schedule. Like, I was like, I don't know how to do that. And, how does that work? Like, and it took me months to do that. And I was so frustrated. It's the same thing with teens. It's like, sometimes I'll say something to like my mom and she'll be like, I would never let you talk to me like that. And I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do? Like,
You're
how do
like,
you
it's not like I
stop
let
them?
them, they just kind of do it.
Right, right. And I was a really different kid than I was, a little scared of my parents, right? And sometimes I think it's okay when my teen lashes out, because I do think they're trying to figure out how they feel. And we've kind of come a long way with that. So, that's like, there is just no guidebook. You have to just figure it out. And it's like picking your battles. Like, how are you supposed to know what battles to pick, right? Like, that's the thing. Like, people say that all the time when you're raising a teen, you got to pick and choose your battles. And I'm always like, okay, well, what if I picked a battle, but then something else happens the next day, which is like a huge battle? Like, do I forget about that battle? Like, so I find I am way more mentally exhausted raising teenagers than, because there's no 7:30 p.m. bedtime. At
Yeah.
7:30, you're like on your first dinner,
Yes.
with your
Yeah.
teens. I mean, you still have 2 more to go.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's a lot different.
I like how you talked about how there's no guidebook because I think with the age of the internet, because when my kids were little, people were starting to blog more. They were starting to like
Right.
connect on Facebook, and people gave lots of advice. They had like lots of parenting blogs. But I find that as my teens get older, there's less and less of that going
Mhm.
around
Yep.
because people, one, want to protect their kids' privacy, but
Right.
two, it's scary to say, I'm struggling with something really big, whether it
Mhm.
feels like there's a vaping addiction, maybe there's
Right.
pornography, maybe there's an eating disorder or depression or anxiety or a suicide threat,
Mhm.
things that feel really big and scary. And I think that parents feel like I can't be honest about
Right.
what's really going on because I don't want to expose my kid to the
Mhm.
world or even
Right.
to a friend. And I don't want to feel judged like you're not
Right.
doing something right. I know that you write your blog, Parenting Teens and Tweens, which I think is such an amazing resource for parents. But how is that translated into how you parent your own kids about
Right.
interacting with others and finding community through this
Mhm.
journey of parenting teens?
I have really big feelings on this part. This is probably my passion project and why I even do what I do. I really feel like as a society, we have taken privacy away from our kids. And I'm not talking about posting, a photo that maybe your kid didn't want that of their first day of school, like things like that. I find that kind of like that's like sharing a Polaroid or something. I understand that some people feel differently, but I think that's not too big deal. What really upsets me is when we share videos, from our Ring cameras of a kid doing something stupid. People post a Facebook photo and they're like, "This teen was walking outside my driveway last night." I think it's so hard to parent in this age of the internet when you're terrified that your kid's face is going to be plastered all over the internet and they don't have any control over it and you can't control the narrative. So I think we have this weird kind of juxtaposition between wanting to highlight how great our kids are but also being terrified of what can happen with one wrong social media post. From that, I think we have really just stopped wanting to be judged in general. And so we don't share our stories. And, I'll tell you, you see it like all the time. Like in one sense, people are like, stop judging, this, that, and the other thing. The next, you're like, oh, I can't believe so and so was drunk at that football game. His parents aren't being involved and this, that, and the other thing. So it's really hard for me to bridge that gap. And so I always try to be vulnerable with people and I encourage my kids to be vulnerable and it's really hard. I think they've really embraced that and because I've embraced it and before I share anything online, I always run it by my kids and I make sure that they feel comfortable with it because it is their story. But they have noticed that parents come up to them at school and they'll say, your mom wrote something. And I don't know which one of you three it was about, but it helped me with my kid.
Oh,
And I saw them in a different way. And and they've been getting that for a long time now. And that's the power of vulnerability. And but you have to, but not everybody can do that because for some people it will cripple them and it will break them. I always find that vulnerability has been my superpower because it's what I feed off of. Being able to help somebody else is like my love language. It's just what makes me feel good as a human being. So even when somebody takes it the wrong way, I can still feel good that I know that I'm helping somebody. But a lot of people struggle with that and they can't take the fact that they have a bad relationship with their teen and the whole world is judging them.
mm.
So it's got to be a mixture of the two. And I know I'm probably not answering what your original question was, but at the end of the day, you have to feel confident in yourself as a parent and that you're doing the best you can. And then you have to realize that whatever your kid does is just what they do. I know I was not the best teenager growing up. I did a lot of things behind my parents' back and I snuck out and I was just lucky I didn't get caught. Like that's really what it boils down to. And so that's the same thing for our own kids. It's like, who is the lucky ones that aren't getting caught? Because a lot of times, your kid, even the good kids are still doing something. They skip school or they drink one time, and that's, it's a natural part of growing up, is making mistakes. It's also like, it's an okay thing. So, I try to write about it in ways where I'm not sharing details, but yet people know that I've been there. And that's the most powerful thing, when somebody says, I feel like I'm not alone. That's what I wish more parents of teens would do, was you don't have to always share your dirty laundry, but you should say, I have laundry too. I try to tell parents all the time, like, you don't have to tell me details, but if you want to talk about something, just come to me. I'm sure I've probably been there. And if I haven't done it as myself when I was a dumb teen, probably one of my teens has done it. And, I might not share their story completely, but I can say, you're not alone in whatever you're feeling. And
Yeah.
so that's kind of how I try to do that. I mean, we had a young boy who was sitting next to my daughter in English class committed suicide last year in our town, about a quarter mile from our house. And, I'm always just trying to tell parents, like, and it wasn't the first time he tried. It was his second, and it was the time he was obviously successful. And, I always tell parents, like, this mom really tried, and she did reach out and she did get support. But, after it happened, what I loved what she did, even though it was such a tragic situation, was she shared what happened leading up to it. So other parents could know what to expect and what to see, and for the signs. She said, this is how it started 4 years ago, when her son first started exhibiting suicidal ideation. And she's like, this is what we did, and this is how the things we did as a family. At the end of the day, she couldn't help her kid, but that wasn't her fault. Like, she did everything she could. So, of course there was rumors, like, they must have been neglectful parents. They must have been this, like, maybe they shouldn't have moved here or done this. And so, I feel so passionately that we have to give people the benefit of the doubt,
Yeah.
and that they're doing the best they can before we start saying they didn't do everything they could to support their child.
Yeah. I think that judgment of others, which I think we do, like, we make judgments about other people and other parents, whether they're stories we see online or they're our friends. But I think that we also turn that judgment on ourselves in those difficult years when the relationship is just not good. And I know that I have done that so much, because you think, okay, if I'm struggling with my relationship with my child, I must be doing something wrong, or
Right,
I must
right,
be, the one who I want to fix it. And sometimes
right,
it's not you who has the relationship issue, it's your child. But like,
right,
as parents, we aren't just writing them off and saying, like, well, forget it, I'm just not going to try because he's not trying. Like, I have to be the one who's the
right.
leader, and the one who says, hey, I want to model relationship restoration with you. I want to talk about counseling with you. I want to do these things, even though it can be completely rough. And I've been down that path. Like, my
Me
twins are
too.
about to turn 15, and oh my gosh, I felt like 14 was 13 to 14. So like a year and a half, 2 years, I felt like that was going to kill me. And
Yeah.
my husband and I joked about, well, let's just research some boarding schools, because we just want to like kick this guy to the curb. And we're like,
Mhm.
can't afford $40,000 a year tuition. So I guess he's going to have to keep living here. And I actually shared that story tongue in cheek. It was all the kids were getting ready for a band competition, and I was sitting with some other moms I didn't know. I'm trying to like make friends at this school.
Right.
And I shared that, and everybody kind of laughed. And then a couple minutes later, this mom says, I'm so glad you said that, because I feel that way sometimes, and I feel like I'm the only one.
Right.
And I think that if we're lonely, there is power in going first. And
Mhm.
you don't have to give like all the juicy details about what
Yep.
your kid's going through. You can focus on, like, I'm struggling in my relationship with my child, and it's super hard. And sometimes I just want to be like, I'm going to yeet you to next week, like, I just want to be done with you.
Right.
But you don't, like, you keep going and you keep
Yep.
trying. But I think sharing that and going first can be an open door to connection, and
Mhm.
that can maybe ease that loneliness that I think we feel so often during these teen years, because
Right.
that's the goop of the teen years, I think, is that
Mhm.
loneliness and feeling
Yep.
isolated and not having like a friend to lean on, because there is that huge transition of relationships and parenting styles. And, how do we do this? There's no, like you said, there's no guide, there's no manual.
100%. Yep. And I think the other thing, about the loneliness is, it's interesting. And you mentioned marching band, like, your kids all of a sudden in high school will often do different things, right? So you have this network of moms, that might be like a park district soccer team or something, just your middle school friends or whatever it is. And then your kids go to high school, and what they're involved with is consumes them, right? And you're not in the school really that much, or you're only seeing a select different group of people, and it can be really hard to find that network again, when you've had it in the elementary school years for sure, and then maybe the middle school years, but then high school is kind of a different beast. And so unless you are with the right set of parents, it can be really intimidating. And I find all the time, it's just like, I love you how you said the power of going first. I also would be like the power of being honest. I mean, I remember sitting in ninth grade at in a meeting. I don't even know what it was for, but there was a woman who was really complaining about the lack of AP classes, advanced placement classes in ninth grade. And she was just kind of going on and on about it. And the parents all started getting riled up. And I remember being like, I just don't want my ninth grader to take a lot of AP classes. And everybody kind of stopped and looked at me, and I was like, what are we trying to do? Like, why should they be taking college classes? And they're like, oh, well, for credit. And I was like, are you sure they're going to get credit? And all of a sudden the whole dynamic of the room changed, and then we started questioning and talking. But it was really hard for me. I was getting anxiety just sitting there being like, oh my God, I didn't sign her up for that AP class, and maybe I should have taken honors English, and really started freaking out. And then the power of just being honest about it just changed everything. But and another mom had come up to me and said, I'm so glad you said that, because I was like freaking out about what we needed to do. And this goes all through high school. And then my twins are getting ready for college applications, and its college applications are just bananas right now. And if there was something I could say I did well in parenting, it was not trying to get sucked up into what everybody else was doing and everybody else was thinking. And part of it is because the dynamic of my kids, like having a daughter who was developmentally delayed in the beginning, meant she couldn't necessarily be the square peg in the square hole. Like, we had to do things differently with her. So I felt more comfortable with that. But I always talk to parents who have kids going into high school, and I'm like, you don't have to take all honors classes unless your kid is like, I have to go to Harvard and Harvard med school. Like, you don't have to do that, and you don't have to do everything. And the getting caught up in the rat race and what everybody else is doing, and the fear of what might happen to your kid if they don't do it. Like, it's all about fear. It's never about, the moment. It's always about the fear of what if. And if you can like kind of control your mindset on that, then that changes everything, I feel like, in parenting teens, because I have a daughter who's kind of a high achiever in academics, but she's a lot of anxiety as well. If I let her take all the AP classes and honors classes that she wanted to, I think she would be broken right now. And so we pushed her in math and science, and then took regular English. And she's now is like, that's been the best decision that I've ever made my entire life. It allowed me to have a life in high school and everything. And it was part of her college essay I'm not looking to go to a college that wants to push me in everything. I want to go to a college that can push me in where I want to go and help me follow my passions and things like that. So, that's like the thing I think about parenting teens as well, is you're always like, and I still carry it, even though I don't act on it, like the angst of what if I don't do this right for my teens, like what will happen to the rest of their life? And the truth is, they'll be fine.
Yeah.
Like, but it's so hard in the moment to be like, oh my gosh, if I don't get them on this travel soccer team, like what happens to them? Or what if they don't make this this class, or what if they don't get an A, or whatever that is? And you feel this angst all the time. And so I think by being honest and vulnerable, like we talked about, it just kind of smooths the waters for everybody else to say, okay, like I'm not the only one, and maybe I don't have to feel like a lunatic all the time.
Yeah, I heard this metaphor recently by a friend, another writer friend, and she was saying, like, are we being the ripple maker or are we being the spiral? And the idea that the spiral is like that fear that just like pulls you down. And then everybody who's kind of in your vicinity,
Mhm.
whether you're voicing it or you're just anxiety, it's kind of oozing out of your pores, like they kind of get sucked into that spiral too.
Right.
But as opposed to like, am I being a ripple maker? Like, am I what I'm putting out in the world, like causing ripples of love and security and contentment? And like the idea of this fear of missing out or fear of pushing your kid to in the wrong things versus like, am I loving this child well in this moment?
Right.
And am
Mhm.
I doing what's best for this child? And like you gave your daughter
Mhm.
that wisdom to say, like, I want you to love yourself and not just
Right.
burn out at both ends in high school. Like you helped her set good boundaries
Yeah.
instead of getting sucked up into the fear of like, oh, well, maybe she does need this class, this class, this class. Like she has to get, like the 4.5 GPA, like she needs
Right.
to be the valedictorian. Like I have to make sure she gets all these things. And instead of just saying like, okay, what does she need to thrive in her life?
Right.
What's going to help her do the best she can? We talked about so many good things, which I love. But I want to talk also about what you've discovered about yourself as a woman in
Mhm.
parenting through these teen years. Like, what is maybe some things that you struggled with, areas of growth, and things that you're like, okay, like I like who I'm becoming during these years?
Yeah, I definitely have a little bit of liking who I'm becoming, and also a little like not always liking who I am in the moment. Most viral post I've ever written has been about how sometimes my kids bring out the worst in me. It's something that I think about a lot. I'm a very I don't want to say deep thinker. I am just a constant thinker. Like my
Yes.
mind just never shuts off. And so I'm always just thinking about different things and how I would do things differently or but I have a hard time controlling what I'm doing in the moment. When when I deal with those negative sides, it's more of, I know the person I want to be and how do I get there? And my teens seem to push all the buttons on my worst faults and highlight them. And because I'm always on this path of just trying to figure out who I want to be and trying to be that person, it's very frustrating when I can't be that person. And it's because my kids are just, they just bring it out of me, and the frustration and the lack of patience and the snarky behavior and how I react to them. But in retrospect, I know I've improved in that a lot, where I feel like I'm a lot more patient, a lot more understanding, a lot more compassionate to seeing things from other people's viewpoints and from my kids' viewpoints. Because, especially, having three girls, they feel a lot. My kids are deep feelers and they feel everything a lot, and so do I. And so there's always a lot of emotions. That's why I say my husband is the most patient person on earth, because when I say someone is always crying, somebody is always crying. And sometimes it's me, and for weird reasons. My daughter sent me a text today who her and I have had kind of an ongoing struggle the past few years. And she was like, Mom, it's free coffee day at Dunkin' Donuts. Would you like me to pick you up a coffee? And for
Oh,
her, that's kind of a big deal because she doesn't always put others first. She's not at that part. And so I was like, my husband came home and I was like, oh, she's going to bring me coffee. And I was
oh.
getting all choked up. He was like, that's a good thing, right? Like,
It's like,
but
I got to feel this out, feel out the situation.
but from that perspective, I love how much we feel in our house and how we are very sensitive to each other's emotions. And, I love to see the people they are becoming. And that part has just been incredibly rich, even though they do sometimes bring out the worst in me, and I'm always fighting that. It's a big push and pull. What I do love about, especially about having three girls, is feed off of their energy a lot. And so I will be turning 50 in a couple of months, and I just feel like my life is starting again. And even though I've worked almost the whole time since I've had my kids in some capacity, them starting their part of their life, I feel like I get to start it almost with them. Even though this year of having two seniors and then even having another junior, a friend said the most profound thing to me yesterday, which is like, I call it the storm before the calm. As they're kind of getting ready for their next phase of the life, and you're going to be empty nester, they are just, or soiling the nest is what they also say. They're soiling the nest before they leave. But for me, it's given me an opportunity to say, what do I want next out of my life. And I'm feeding off of their energy, even though it's been hard to really still figure out what I want to do when I grow up. And that's been really exciting. And I think a lot of people talk about losing themselves in motherhood. And I feel like I found myself. Not only that I could be kind of good at this parenting thing, and I think I found a purpose with it, but also just learning how to have complex relationships with people and be more understanding. And I've loved every stage, some more than others, but I've loved every stage. And I would have probably never gotten into writing as much if I didn't have these 3 kids and somebody told me I was funny on Facebook. Like I probably wouldn't have gotten into that. So I found this whole second career that I never even dreamed about. It just kind of fell in my lap. And I have my kids to thank for that. I will be forever grateful that they've allowed me to share our crazy life with the rest of the world, and that they do it sometimes themselves. And one of my daughters wants to be a creative writing major and psychology minor, and she's really into that. And I told her I would love to take psychology classes with her. A lot of people say they lose themselves in motherhood, and then when their kids leave, they don't know what to do with themselves. I don't know how I'm going to fit everything in, but I really look forward to that. And I feel like we've done the work now to where we can kind of get along in the future. And I like that they're excited for me too, to see what comes up next in my career, and they kind of learn from that, even though they're going in really different directions. But I think you have to continue to evolve throughout motherhood as a woman and as a mother. You have to work really hard on your relationships with your kids, like really hard, but you also have to work really hard on yourself.
When I think back to high school and I think of that graduation, there's like such that anticipation of the future, new dreams, and like you're just launching into the world, into something new. And I like how you described yourself in that way as well, because as women, our dreams aren't over just because
No.
we are mothers, and they're not over because maybe our at-home mothering experience is coming to the end of a chapter. Like it's something that's new and that we can anticipate our growth, even if it's messier than you think, or even if it takes you a little while to figure it out. Like there's new life available for us even in these big transitions. So Whitney, this
Right.
was such a great conversation. I love talking to you. I have
Thank
these
you.
10 rapid fire questions that I like to
Okay.
ask at the end of all the interviews. So are you ready?
Okay. I'm
Okay.
ready.
Which Disney princess would you want to take out to coffee?
Belle.
Oh, me too. She's my favorite. So that's
I mean,
great.
she's the best with all the books,
Yes. You'd have great conversations about books and
I would love
libraries.
her.
Yes. And magical
That was easy.
furniture.
Exactly. She's awesome.
Would you rather spend a weekend at a cabin in the woods or in the city with great restaurants?
See the beach.
Oh, see the beach. You're like, I'm gonna do option C. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay. No, but I wouldn't mind a cabin in the woods either, but I love the beach is my favorite, but if I had to, I would probably take the cabin in the woods.
That's great. An ordinary moment that brings you great joy.
Sunday night dinners with my family.
That's really special. Coffee or tea?
Coffee. So much coffee.
Last show you binged and loved.
Ted Lasso.
Oh, I love Ted
For
Lasso.
sure.
I cannot wait
Yep.
for the next season to come
I
out.
know. I've watched it like 4 times.
Oh,
So
that's so great. It's so good. I'm sure you get something out of it every single time where you're like, oh, I missed it last time. Go-to book, fiction or nonfiction?
Oh, that's an interesting one. So I have this weird philosophy where I try to read a fiction book and then a nonfiction book. So I often read a fiction book at night and then listen to a nonfiction book on audio when I'm walking my dog.
I do
So,
that too.
but
Yeah,
yeah,
I gotta have like 3 different books going at
I
once.
know my husband is like, what is wrong with you? But I would probably say, like, when I have the opportunity to read, I must always pick up fiction, and historical fiction is my favorite.
Oh, I love that too. When you were 5 years old, what did you want to be when you grew up?
So I wanted to be a politician. I wanted to work in the government.
Oh,
So I didn't necessarily want to be president, want to be president, but I wanted to work in the government. And my father was like huge into politics. Not that he worked in it, but he loved following it. And so that was his passion. And we used to talk about it all the time. So my dream always was to work in Washington, D.C.
well, that's cool. Did you ever work in DC?
I did my first job for almost 4 years. I worked for a congressman from Florida in DC. So, but I had met my husband and I realized it wasn't all that you think it is when you're there. And so I moved off the DC platform and went into more public relations and writing and things like that.
Yeah. I love asking that follow-up question, like, did it actually manifest itself?
Mhm.
Because usually, like, when you have that little dream in your heart when you're little, it comes out in
Yeah.
some way, shape, or form,
Yep.
either maybe in a season of your life, but I think that that's, like, in people, like, from when they're really little, so I
I
love
think
that
so
question.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are you looking forward to?
Going to the beach. That's we have a little beach vacation coming up, my husband and I, for my 50th birthday. And so and we're trying to see if we can finagle maybe buying a beach house or like that sort of thing, a beach condo or something in the future. So that's like
Oh, I
our
hope that works
big
out. That's
long-term dream.
awesome. Yeah.
Me too, fingers crossed.
Yes. All right, last one. Finish this sentence. Motherhood is
Complex
for sure.
and beautiful, but I feel like it's complex and a lot of highs and lows.
Well, Whitney, where can we find you online?
So a lot of my work is on our blog, parentingteensandtweens.com. And you can find a lot of my writing there. And that's where I'm spending a lot of my my efforts. But I'm also on Facebook and Instagram at Whitney Fleming Writes. And it's kind of where I write just a lot of random musings of stuff. Sometimes it's about my kids, sometimes it's about mental health, my own and others, sometimes it's about midlife, kind of a lot of random stuff. But all of my parenting content really is shifted over to parentingteensandtweens.com.
Well, I'll make sure to share all of your links in the show notes so people can find you. And I hope you guys can follow because she's got great content. She's a beautiful writer, and I'm just so happy to have you on here today.
Thank you so much. This was fun.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Motherhood Metamorphosis. If you've enjoyed this episode, please hit the thumbs up and subscribe to this channel so you never miss an episode. Next, tell your friends. Podcasts are a slow growth type of social media, so promo works best when it's from person to person. If you know another mom who's in the goop right now, send her a text of encouragement and the link to the episode that is speaking to your heart right now. If you have a story about your own matrescence, the physical, emotional, hormonal, and social transition that occurs when someone becomes a mother, please leave a comment below. I want this channel to be a place where women can build community about the challenges and joys of their own motherhood metamorphosis. Thank you so much for listening today. I hope it encouraged you and gave you some good food for thought. If you ever have any questions, comments, or you'd like to reach out to me personally, you can email me at brittanyaming@gmail.com.
I feel like I'm just like whack-a-moling all like the parenting stages
I mean,
every day. And, hopefully I'm succeeding like 50% of the time, because that's what like these psychologists say, like meet your kids' needs like 50% of the time. I'm like, okay. That gives me a
50%. I love it. Amen.